Now, Melissa and I sat down with former San Francisco Mayor Willie Brown to talk about immigration and Sanctuary City and its effect all over the nation. And the question goes, where do we go from here?
San Francisco in the Bay Area and California will continue to be a thorn in the side of Trump, or an opportunity for the Trump folk in the world to continue to criticize us. That situation is not defensible, frankly, when you have as many times that this guy was sent back to Mexico, when you have as many felonies that he's been convicted of. There's just no way to justify. And so you aren't going to find any of us standing up, whether it'll be Ed Lee, whether it'll be President of Board of Supervisors. You're going to find Jerry Brown. You're going to find anybody defending him.
Well, and there are a couple of ways that this could play out. We've got the ballot measure to remove the law that says California is a sanctuary state. We've got the Kate Steinle law that passed in the House in June but has stalled in the Senate, and that may get some new momentum to be passed there. So there are certain things that, while San Franciscans might not be moving to change the current situation here, it may provide fodder or fuel for movements and other laws to be changed elsewhere.
There's also one other piece that nobody is focused on. There's been a lawsuit filed against the federal government for that person working for the federal government who had that gun that may not have complied with all the rules and regulations.
The one that was stolen and wound up being used
to keep that gun from becoming readily available.
Mayor Brown, is this putting San Francisco again in the spotlight or in the center of the national debate?
San Francisco seems to have a way of becoming everybody's knowledgeable city from a distance. And we're keeping that position occupied for sure with this decision.
Knowledgeable?
That's how people see us.
You think?
They see us as knowledgeable?
Not on Twitter, I'll be honest. Yesterday there was a big push to boycott San Francisco, although I'm not sure the folks saying that were necessarily going to come here anyway. But yeah, we absolutely are going to, I think, continue to be a lightning rod and, represent a lot of things for people who aren't here.
You know, Melissa, it's not just San Francisco. This week, Oakland is also going to be taking up the question of whether to even put further restrictions on its police cooperating with immigration.
And when you poll people, we did a poll last week showing that the vast majority of people in the Bay Area want local police to cooperate with immigration officials when it comes to violent criminals. But remember, this, Mr. Garcia Zarate was not convicted of a violent crime as currently defined under California law. That weapons possessions charge wouldn't even get him into the sort of area of people we would be talking about.
And as a matter of fact, he'd still be covered by the San Francisco sanctuary measure.
That's right. He would not be, his whereabouts would not be reported to immigration.
Well, Melissa and I decided to ask former San Francisco Mayor Willie Brown himself, who's been the target of a number of investigations over his career, what his take was on Flynn's plea and where we go from here.
All I can say is the advice that I've always given my potential clients: whatever you do, talk to the FBI and you're guaranteed to have a crime. Because at some point they're going to ask you your name and you're not going to give it fully, and that may be a lie.
Leaving out the middle part. Well, it does seem, there's this speculation that Flynn might be cooperating with the feds, and this isn't necessarily at odds with that. You could have pled down to this sort of lower charge of lying to the authorities in exchange for giving some testimony and cooperating in other ways.
But keep in mind, there's two parts to the Flynn deal. There's the part that we all focus on about Trump. But Flynn was running his own operation, and his own operation was far more remunerative, potentially, than anything he was doing with Trump. He was very close to Trump, and my guess is he must have concealed his conduct from Trump. Otherwise, Trump wouldn't have been saying to everybody in the world, he's a good guy, let him alone.
But yeah, he's the one person that the president hasn't said anything bad about. He's distanced himself from Manafort, saying, who? Paul Manafort? I don't even know the guy. But when it comes to Flynn, he maintains a very positive attitude towards him.
But is Mueller the kind of guy that turns witnesses for favorable testimony and sometimes questionable testimony?
Yeah, well, when he remember he prosecuted the Enron scandal, and he was masterful at sort of moving the pieces around to get people to testify against each other. But remember, he's still bound to certain ethics and rules. He's not going to he can't legally or he can't ethically sort of put forth lies.
I don't think this is a prosecutor who ever doubts his ability to look at the evidence and to make the case with or without cooperation. I don't think he looks to find somebody to corrupt them into being more expressive of their involvement in my involvement or your involvement. This is a guy who plays it by the book. And this may all be focused on Flynn, not Trump.
That's interesting. As an attorney, we have a couple of investigations going on here. We have the quote-unquote collusion or relationship with Russia, and then you have how the Trump administration responded to that when it became under investigation, right? So it's the, I don't want to call it a crime, but it is that and the usual cover-up. Which one can get you in bigger trouble?
Obviously, it's the cover-up. Like, for example, here, what Flynn pled guilty to was talking to the Russian ambassador, which is not a big deal. That's certainly normal to do. They were alleged to have talked about like a UN resolution. But the problem is that when specifically asked in January, Flynn denied it. And so it was the cover-up that constituted this charge that gave Mueller's investigation team the leverage to get him to plead to at least that. So maybe in exchange for some additional information.
So we will have to see how it plays out, whether it is the collusion or it is the possible cover-up.